Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a stack of source material and diving into the life and career of, well, a true cultural and sonic architect, Stevie Wonder.
And when you say architect, that's really the right word. I mean, it's almost impossible to fully quantify his impact over a 6-decade career.
The baseline numbers alone are just staggering, aren't they?
They really are.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking at sales over 100 million records globally. And then there are the Grammys, a record-setting 25 wins, plus a Lifetime Achievement Award. But what the sources really show isn't just success, it's a revolution. He fundamentally reshaped the R&B landscape.
And in doing so, he changed the entire music industry.
Completely.
Exactly. So our mission today is to unpack that monumental transition. He starts out as this tightly managed blind child star inside the legendary Motown machine.
A machine defined by the singles market, right? Strict creative rules.
Totally. And he evolves from that into this autonomous genius who's pioneering new electronic sounds, injecting deep social consciousness into pop music, and achieving a level of critical acclaim that is still unmatched.
And that's the big question for you, the curious learner tuning in.
Yeah.
How did he pull that off? How does one artist, a multi-instrumentalist who plays everything from the harmonica to the synthesizer, fight for and win a level of creative control that lets him win Album of the Year at the Grammys 3 times in a row?
With 3 consecutive albums.
Exactly. That kind of dominance is, and I mean this literally, unique in music history.
So we're drawing from a ton of comprehensive sources detailing his early years, those fierce contract battles in the early 70s, his revolutionary classic period, and of course his political activism that actually changed federal law. This deep dive is really your shortcut to understanding that precise moment where personal genius, new technology, and profound social impact all converge to create one of the greatest forces in modern music. Okay, let's unpack this journey, and we have to start right at the beginning. Saginaw, Michigan. He was born Stevlin Hardaway Judkins on May 13, 1950.
Right, and he later adopted the surname Morris, which, according to his mother's biography, was an old family name.
But the very foundation of his life, his entire sensory experience, really, is rooted in a medical event right at birth.
A tragedy, really. He was born 6 weeks premature, and the sources are very explicit about this. His blindness was caused by a condition called retinopathy of prematurity, or ROP.
Which, back in the 1950s, was often linked to the incubators, right?
Exactly. The high-oxygen atmosphere inside the incubators that were meant to save his life.
Yeah.
It tragically caused the growth of his eyes to stop, which ultimately led to his retinas detaching.
It's such a critical piece of context, and his family life shifted early on, too. His mother divorced his father and moved with the children to Detroit when Stevie was just 4.
And Detroit, I mean. The hard-working, culturally rich environment of the inner city, that became a totally different kind of incubator for his genius.
It really was. You can see it happening so quickly.
Incredibly formative. By age 7 or 8, that instrumental talent, that polymathy, is already starting to emerge. He's playing the piano, the harmonica, which becomes his signature sound, and the drums.
And he's not just playing in his room. By age 8, he's already a soloist in the Whitestone Baptist Church Choir.
He's just absorbing everything. Gospel, soul, rhythm, and blues.
Mm-hmm.
And he's translating it all through his hands and his voice.
Before he ever gets near Motown, he's already performing. The sources mention he formed a little singing duo with a friend. Stevie and John, they called themselves.
Yeah, playing on street corners, at local parties. It speaks volumes about the raw, unpolished nature of his talent before the Motown machine got a hold of him.
And that seismic shift happens in 1961. He's just 11 years old. The story is almost legendary.
It really is. He sang his own song, Lonely Boy, for Ronnie White of the Miracles.
And White was just blown away.
Completely captivating. He brings young Stevland and his mother to audition at Hitsville, USA, and Barry Gordy, the CEO, signs him to the Tamil label right away.
And this is where the system immediately kicks in. Gordy gives him that stage name, Little Stevie Wonder.
And that word, little, it's not just a cute nickname, is it? It signifies his role. He was a child commodity and managed prodigy. He was not a self-directed artist.
Not at all. And the details on the control mechanism are fascinating. It was a rolling 5-year contract, which was pretty standard, but the financial control was absolute.
Total. All of his royalties were held in a trust fund that he couldn't touch until he turned 21.
So until he could get his hands on his own money, the structure was, well, it was almost frugal.
Incredibly strict. He and his mother got a weekly stipend for expenses, and we know the exact amount he received. $2.50 a week.
Wow. Which, I mean, even for back then.
It sounds like nothing. But the sources do clarify it's the equivalent of about $26 in 2024 money. It was designed to keep him dependent on the system.
A pittance for a talent like that, especially since they put him on tour almost immediately.
And since he was a minor, he had to have a private tutor on the road with him. It just underscores that despite his massive talent, he was completely, legally, and financially tied to the Motown machine.
His early career was guided by producer Clarence Paul, who worked on his first two albums.
Right. The Jazz Soul of Little Stevie, which was mostly instrumentals, and Tribute to Uncle Ray, a collection of Ray Charles covers.
And neither of them did very well.
Not at all. The Motown machine was built on hits. So when those first two albums faltered, the pressure to produce a hit was immense. That live album was, in a way, kind of a strategic Hail Mary.
So how does this untested 12-year-old kid suddenly become the youngest person ever to top the charts?
It all comes down to that live album, recorded live, The 12-Year-Old Genius. It was recorded while he was touring the Chitlin Circuit.
And we should probably define that for you, the listener. The Chitlin Circuit was this network of performance venues, mostly in the South and Midwest, that were absolutely essential for Black entertainers during the Jim Crow era.
It was where Black talent honed its craft, raw, live, and unpolished.
And in May 1963, Motown releases that live album, and on it is the single Fingertips.
Fingertips just captured lightning in a bottle. It was this high-energy, totally infectious performance. And the sources point to this one brilliant, specific anecdote that defines his raw energy.
The spontaneous encore.
The spontaneous encore. His enthusiasm was so great that he just kept playing, and it completely caught the replacement bass player off guard.
You can actually hear the chaos and the genius right on the track. The bass player famously yells out, "What key? What key?" It's just this moment of unplanned, electrifying musicality.
And at age 13, that single goes to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. He becomes the youngest solo artist ever to top that chart.
Which was a huge crossover achievement because it also hit #1 on the R&B chart at the same time. He had arrived.
He had. But then, almost immediately, he's hit with what the sources call the transition crisis.
He's growing up, his voice is changing, which is often the kiss of death for child singers.
And it almost was. Motown executives actually considered dropping his contract because the few records he made after Fingertips didn't do well.
This is where Sylvia Morey comes in, right? A producer and songwriter at Motown.
She saved his career. She persuaded Berry Gordy to give him another chance, and she worked closely with him to develop a new, more mature sound. They dropped the little from his name, and together they produced Uptight, Everything's All Right.
Which was a massive hit. It marked his transition into a serious artist.
It must have been a terrifying time, though. He drops the little, but his voice is still in flux. There's a real physical risk of losing it entirely.
So how did he manage that? How did he generate hits while his main instrument, his voice, was so unreliable?
By leaning on his other gifts, his instrumental abilities, and crucially, his songwriting. The hits that followed in the mid to late 60s showed this deepening complexity. You have I Was Made to Love Her, the huge orchestral sound of For Once in My Life.
And his cover of Bob Dylan's Blowin' in the Wind.
Right. He wasn't just singing anymore. He was arranging and performing these complex pieces.
And he was getting more involved behind the scenes, working in the Motown songwriting department. He was learning how the Hitsville factory actually worked from the inside.
And he co-wrote The Tears of a Clown, which became a #1 hit for Smokey Robinson and the Miracles years later.
A key step. And then by 1970, he takes another huge stride toward artistic freedom. Signed, Sealed, Delivered, I'm Yours becomes his first ever self-produced song.
That one moment foreshadows everything that's about to happen. He proved he could manage his own sound, and he was getting very close to that all-important 21st birthday when his contract was up.
The apprenticeship was officially over. He had worked inside the Motown system, learned its rules, and now he was ready to dismantle them and write his own.
It's the prelude to a revolution that would redefine the power balance between artists and labels for decades to come.
So if the 60s were the apprenticeship, the 70s are absolutely the graduation. We're now entering his classic period, which is defined by 5 consecutive albums of just staggering creativity, and it all hinges on one date, May 13, 1971.
His 21st birthday, the day his first Motown contract expired, And more importantly, the day the trust holding all his royalties was finally released.
So he didn't just get access to his money, he gained a ton of leverage.
Immense leverage, and he didn't just walk away from Motown. He used that leverage to negotiate the most freedom any artist at the label had ever achieved.
And the new deal he signed in 1972, it wasn't just a pay raise, it was a constitutional change for the music industry, a 120-page contract.
That length, 120 pages, is so important because it tells you this was a precedent-setting document. It secured him two fundamental things: a much, much higher royalty rate. And this is the crucial part: full creative control.
And full creative control meant everything, didn't it?
Everything. He dictated where he recorded, the budget, the pace, the instruments, his producers, his engineers. He was essentially financing and running his own operation, which he called Wonderland.
And that autonomy immediately lets him shift the entire philosophy of R&B music. Motown was built on the singles market. Fast production, quick profits.
Exactly. Singles were cheap and quick. But Wonder pushed the entire genre into the album era. Starting with Music of My Mind in 1972, he started crafting these LPs as cohesive, thematic, socially conscious statements.
Not just a collection of songs built around one or two hits.
Precisely. And that requires time and money, a luxury that his new 120-page mandate gave him.
That freedom allowed him to explore themes of social justice, politics, mysticism, stuff that was way deeper than the standard Motown love song. But the second big factor here was technology.
Oh, the technology was revolutionary. He became fascinated with synthesizers after hearing an electronic group called Tonto's Expanding Headband. And starting with Music of My Mind, he began this long collaboration with Robert Margouleff and Malcolm Cecil, the guys behind Tawantiro.
Let's define Tawantiro, because it wasn't just a synth, was it? It was the original new timbral orchestra.
It was a beast. The sources describe it as this custom-built, massive synthesizer rig, physically huge. And unlike the monophonic synths of the time, Tawantiro could create these incredibly complex, layered, enormous sounds.
And that allowed him to become a virtual one-man band.
He would use overdubbing to play almost everything himself: drums, bass, keyboards, synth, all the vocals. And that approach just fundamentally reshaped R&B. He moved away from the traditional live backing bands towards this electronic, layered, deeply personal sound.
You can hear it so clearly on Talking Book from late 1972. It's got Superstition with that aggressive, funky sound of the Honor clavinet.
That sound is instantly recognizable. It became a huge hit, won 3 Grammys, right alongside the smoother classic, You Are the Sunshine of My Life.
And he did something very strategic right after that album came out, didn't he? He toured with the Rolling Stones.
A brilliant move. The tour in '72 was explicitly meant to break him out of the R&B pigeonhole in America. It got his innovative sound in front of a massive, mostly white rock audience. It was commercial genius paired with artistic risk.
The momentum just became unstoppable. And this leads to the run of albums that gave him what everyone now calls the Grammy hat trick between '74 and '77.
Let's break that down, because it wasn't just a lucky streak. It was sustained genius. It starts with Intervisions in 1973.
And that album was so profoundly socially conscious, living for the city, higher ground.
It tackled urban despair, spiritual awakening, critiques of the political system. This was not saccharine pop music.
Was there any pushback at the time? Or were the Grammys just reflecting his commercial dominance?
That's a fair question. But with Intervisions, the artistic merit was just undeniable. The sources are unified on this. It was a triumph. It won him Album of the Year and cemented him as the most acclaimed and influential black musician of the early '70s. It's number 34 on Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Albums.
Then he follows that up so quickly with Fulfillingness's first finale in 1974.
Right, which continued the streak. It had the #1 political protest song, You Haven't Done Nothing, which was a direct shot at President Nixon.
And that won Album of the Year again?
Again. And this incredible consistency is why Paul Simon's famous quip at the 1976 Grammys is so perfect.
Right. When Simon won, he said,
I'd like to thank Stevie Wonder, who didn't make an album this year. It was the ultimate compliment. It was an acknowledgement of the creative vacuum Wonder left when he wasn't releasing music.
But he was busy. He was preparing what many consider his masterpiece. September 1976, he dropped Songs in the Key of Life.
A mammoth double album with an extra EP. It was sprawling, ambitious, and proved the value of that 120-page contract. The sources note it was the first album by an American artist to debut straight at #1 on the Billboard charts.
And it gave us huge hits like I Wish, Sir Duke, and of course, Isn't She Lovely, written for his daughter Aisha.
and he adamantly refused to shorten that song for a single release, which again just highlights his fierce, uncompromising artistic control. He wasn't bending to radio demands anymore.
And of course, Songs in the Key of Life wins Album of the Year, completing the hat trick.
Which makes him the only artist to ever win that award with 3 consecutive album releases. It's a statistical anomaly that just underscores his total creative dominance.
Beyond the music, there were some huge personal events during this period. In August of 1973, right after Innervisions came out, he was in a really serious car accident.
That crash was existential. The car he was in hit the back of a truck. It was severe enough to put him in a coma for 4 days.
And it had lasting physical effects, right?
Yeah, a partial loss of his sense of smell and a temporary loss of his sense of taste. That brush with mortality is often cited as fueling the even deeper spiritual and political intensity of his later albums.
And yet, just a few months later, against doctor's orders, he's back on stage.
November 73, he's performing a benefit concert for Shaw University, where he was on the board of trustees. The concert raised over $10,000 for their scholarship fund. Just incredible resilience.
And another vital technological connection happens in 1976 that links his personal life with global innovation.
The Kurzweil reading machine. He became the first production user. He was the first multi-font reading machine for the blind, and it kicked off this long professional association with the inventor, Ray Kurzweil.
So his own needs are driving technological innovation that ends up benefiting countless other people.
That's a theme you see again and again.
The decade's sonic experimentation kind of wraps up with the 1979 soundtrack album, Journey Through the Secret Life of Plants.
Which was, commercially a bit less accessible, but it showed he was still right at the forefront of technology, using an early digital sampler to compose the whole thing.
So the foundation was set. He walked into the 70s as a former child star fighting for $250 a week, and he left it as a musical deity who had personally dictated the direction of R&B, pop, and electronic music for the next 20 years.
An absolute giant.
So as we move into the 1980s, Wonder's career shifts. He goes from that critically acclaimed, artistically dense classic period to, well, a period of just unprecedented commercial and political visibility.
It kicks off with his first platinum-selling single album, Hotter Than July, in 1980.
And that album was this really calculated blend of accessibility and social commitment.
It was. And it had what is probably his most politically important song of the entire decade, Happy Birthday.
Which was instrumental in the campaign to establish Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday as a federal holiday.
Absolutely instrumental. This wasn't just a tribute song. The sources confirm it was a political tool.
So how was it actually used in the campaign?
Well, Wonder basically adopted it as the movement's anthem. He performed it at rallies, he organized nationwide tours specifically to push for the holiday, and he actively lobbied Congress. The song gave a celebratory, unifying soundtrack to a political goal.
So it made it emotionally accessible to the public, which then created this huge grassroots pressure.
Exactly. It proved the political power of a perfectly crafted pop song.
And that political engagement was clearly at the front of his mind. In 1982, he has another #1 hit, this time with Paul McCartney.
Ebony and Ivory, an overt paean to racial harmony. It fit perfectly with his public persona at the time.
He was everywhere during this period, crossing all these genre lines. But the peak of his commercial power really converges with his deepest political conviction in 1984.
Right, when he records the soundtrack for the film The Woman in Red.
Which gives us the massive global hit, I Just Called to Say I Love You.
A song that topped charts everywhere, won him an Academy Award for Best Original Song, and led to this spectacular moment of global activism.
It's a complex moment, though, isn't it? Because while the song was a huge commercial success, it got some criticism for being musically lighter.
A little saccharine, maybe.
Yeah.
Especially compared to the depth of Innervisions. But that commercial trade-off, that universal accessibility, is what allowed his political voice to reach a truly global platform.
And he used that platform masterfully. When he accepts the Oscar for the song, he accepts it not just for himself.
He accepts it in the name of Nelson Mandela, who at the time was still imprisoned by the apartheid regime in South Africa.
And the consequences of that were immediate.
Swift and serious. The sources confirm that this direct public dedication at one of the most visible events in the world resulted in his music being immediately banned from all South African radio by the government.
I mean, that's the definition of an artist whose voice carries real political weight. It was deemed dangerous enough to be silenced by an authoritarian regime.
And that action just cemented his global reputation as an anti-racist activist. He was honored by the UN Special Committee Against Apartheid that same year, in 1985.
We mentioned his collaboration with Ray Kurzweil with the Reading Machine, but that association got even deeper in the early 80s and led to another huge technological leap.
This time for music production itself. In 1982, Wonder invites Kurzweil to his LA studio and basically poses a challenge.
He wanted to apply the flexible computer control he had with synthesizers to the acoustic sounds of real instruments, pianos, strings, horns.
And that conversation led directly to Kurzweil founding Kurzweil Music Systems and the release of the Kurzweil Key 250 synthesizer in 1984.
Which was revolutionary. It was one of the first electronic instruments to successfully emulate the complex sounds of acoustic instruments using digital sampling.
So again, he wasn't just adopting technology, he was actively spurring the creation of entirely new musical tools.
He also continued his commitment to those big charity singles, lending his voice to We Are the World in '85, and That's What Friends Are for AIDS research in '86.
The 90s saw him continue to release music, though the pace definitely slowed down compared to the 70s. He did the soundtrack for Spike Lee's Jungle Fever in '91.
And he collaborated with Babyface on a song about domestic violence, How Come, How Long, showing that his commitment to tackling difficult social issues never really wavered.
He also cemented his place as this national musical figure, performing at the '96 Olympics closing ceremony, the Super Bowl halftime show in '99. His presence just signified cultural importance.
And his influence stretched across generations, didn't it? He was collaborating with everyone.
Everyone, from Busta Rhymes and Snoop Dogg to Mark Ronson and even Travis Scott in 2018. The sound of his harmonica, the thing that gave him his first hit, is still this cross-generational sonic bridge.
There's also this profound and kind of heartbreaking side of his later career, his role as the musician chosen to honor the fallen giants of music.
The sources list 4 huge ones. He performed at the memorials for Michael Jackson, Etta James, Whitney Houston, and Aretha Franklin. He became the standard bearer for expressing collective grief through music.
And speaking of new directions, in 2020, he makes this huge industry move that really mirrors his rebellion from 5 decades earlier.
After nearly 60 years exclusively on Motown, he launches his own label, So What the Fuss Records.
Which says a lot about his desire to remain creatively and politically relevant, even as he enters his 8th decade. He's still releasing these socially conscious singles.
And he's been very open about his future ambitions. The sources mention 2 specific projects he's working on now.
One is the gospel inspired by Lula, his mother, which will deal with spiritual and cultural crises.
And the other is Through the Eyes of Wonder, an album he describes as a performance piece that will reflect his experience as a blind man. Deeply personal, potentially profound projects.
And finally, we have to talk about his connection to Africa, specifically Ghana.
It's a connection that deepened significantly later in life. He visited Ghana for Panafest in 1992 and was so impacted by it that he said he would eventually move there permanently.
And that long-term dream became a reality just recently. On his 74th birthday, May 13, 2024, he was officially granted Ghanaian citizenship.
He took the oath of allegiance in Accra. It solidified this transnational aspect of his identity and career, completing a personal journey that began all the way back in the 90s.
So when you zoom out on Stevie Wonder's career, from the Motown factory floor to this global stage, his legacy is one of just sheer technical mastery, combined with this profound moral and creative authority.
And let's start with that instrumental talent. I mean, the term polymathy almost doesn't do it justice.
He didn't just play instruments, he mastered enough of them to create entire sonic worlds all by himself.
Exactly. He's known for vocals and keyboards, the Rhodes, the clavinets, but the sources credit him with piano, synthesizer, harmonica, drums, congas, bongos, organ, melodica.
And that ability to play almost every part, combined with his compositional genius, is what allowed him to propel R&B into that album era. He created musical landscapes, not just catchy songs.
And his influence goes so far beyond R&B and soul. He's cited as a pioneer by musicians across pop, funk, and rock. His use of those funky keyboard rhythms, his total control of production, that became the blueprint.
Peer recognition is a huge part of his legacy. The 1983 Rolling Stone Record Guide said his classic period albums pioneered stylistic approaches that helped to determine the shape of pop music for the next decade.
And you see that influence cited directly by modern giants. Kanye West said he wasn't trying to compete with his contemporaries. He was trying to compete with inner visions and songs in the key of life.
To set that as your benchmark, that's the ultimate compliment.
And the sources offer even higher praise from a classical perspective. Composer Erlen Wallen, the master of the King's music, said she'd place him pretty close to Bach for his musicianship.
That comparison moves him from pop history into just music history.
He's consistently ranked among the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
Rolling Stone named him the 7th greatest singer and 15th greatest artist. The critical, commercial, and peer consensus all align, which is incredibly rare.
And then there are the awards, which tell their own story of unprecedented success. We know the 25 Grammys, the Lifetime Achievement, but the specific records he holds are what's really amazing.
He's tied for the most Album of the Year wins, with 3. That puts him alongside Frank Sinatra, Paul Simon, and Taylor Swift. But, and this is the key, he's the only artist to have won that award with 3 consecutive album releases.
That sequence, interfusions, fulfillingnesses, songs in the key of life. It's a unique statistical anomaly. No one else has managed to duplicate it.
His recognition goes way beyond the Grammys, too. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Songwriters Hall of Fame.
And for his civil rights work, he received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, America's highest civilian honor, in 2014, and the Library of Congress's Gershwin Prize in 2009.
The sources also give us a glimpse into his personal life, which is complex and rich. He's been married 3 times. First to Motown singer-songwriter Sarita Wright, who collaborated with him on those first independent albums.
And he has a large family with 9 children with 5 women. His daughter, Aisha Morris, the inspiration for Isn't She Lovely, is a singer who's toured with him.
You see this multi-generational involvement in his art, which suggests this deep commitment to family alongside his public career.
We also learned about his recent health challenges. He had a successful kidney transplant in December 2019.
And fortunately, while that's a serious medical event, it hasn't slowed down his creative output.
And a final snapshot of his personal beliefs. A longtime Baptist, he was introduced to transcendental meditation, and he's a vegan. You can see how that belief system informs his moral and political stances.
Ultimately, everything we've covered, from the $250 a week stipend to the 120-page contract, from the accidental encore to the creation of the Kurzweil K250, from the ban in South Africa to his Ghanaian citizenship, it all tells the story of an artist who achieved total mastery only after fighting tooth and nail for total control.
He transcended the system that was designed to contain him, proving that genius, when combined with fierce independence, can become an unstoppable force of nature. So, what does this all mean for you, the learner, taking this deep dive with us today? We've synthesized that Stevie Wonder's staggering legacy is really defined by 3 converging powerful elements.
First, there's the extraordinary political power of his voice. He used his platform strategically. The MLK holiday campaign, the Mandela dedication, and the subsequent government ban. He turned pop music into high-stakes political leverage.
Second, that creative revolution of the 1970s. He redefined R&B and the whole idea of the album by demanding autonomy, integrating new technology like the TO-NUU synthesizer, and creating these complex, socially relevant LPs that just shattered the Motown singles mold.
And third, it's the cold, hard fact of his unmatched critical success. That historic, unique, consecutive Grammy sweep for Album of the Year. It proves that commercial accessibility and complex, challenging art aren't mutually exclusive.
His story is really a masterclass. It shows that when immense self-directed talent fights to break free from restrictive systems, it doesn't just make great music, it literally changes industry standards and amplifies a message globally.
And here's where it gets really interesting for the future. Think about his current projects, especially that album, Through the Eyes of Wonder, which is meant to reflect his experience as a blind man.
After 6 decades of unparalleled sonic innovation and commitment to these profound themes.
What new insights into perception, into knowledge, into artistic expression could an artist of his magnitude focus purely on that intimate perspective of a non-visual reality still reveal to the world?
It's a truly deep dive into the nature of human experience, using music to convey a reality beyond sight. That final personal exploration might just be his most ambitious project yet.